from Abuja.
Hello, thank you for being a part of our show. We appreciate you. I'm Magnus Paco, and this is Magnus Paco GVA, Global Views Africa. As always, it's all about how we can raise the level of living. That's what it's all about. In view today, Nigeria has now once again declared its readiness to fight and defeat poverty. It was wonderful to hear from President Muhammadu Buhari that Nigeria can lift 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. So now, like Pharaoh or the king of Egypt, the president has had his dream or vision. Who will interpret it for us as to how it can be achieved? In general, how can we fight and defeat poverty in Nigeria? And so we have with us Dr. Otive Ibuza to help us. Dr. Ibuza is the Executive Director of the African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development. He was previously head of Action Aid Nigeria, and so is well qualified to see how a country can end poverty. So, don't go away. But before this, in our Hidden Economics, we look at how people might want more of your social value. Now, up next in our quick view, we compare GDP per capita for key reasons. That's coming right up. According to the data, Nigeria was virtually at par with South Korea in regard to gross domestic product per capita through much of the 1960s. Indeed, up to the mid-1960s, Ghana's GDP per capita was practically double that of Nigeria and South Korea. Ghana soon began to show economic lethargy as Nigeria shot ahead only to enter into its own doldrums. Today, South Korea's GDP per capita at over $31,000 is 28th in the world, compared to Nigeria's value of $2,049 at number 141 in the world. Ghana ranks at number 137 in the world with $2,206 per capita. In this connection, in which year this South Korea's GDP per capita, which was virtually at par with that of Nigeria in the mid-1960s, jumped to more than 10 times that of Nigeria. 1979, 1989, 1999, or 2009. In which year did the world's average GDP per capita, which was just over 3 times that of sub-Saharan Africa's, jump to more than 5 times the value for sub-Saharan Africa? 1976, 1986, 1996, or 2006. Stay with us for our answers coming up shortly. Still in view, Dr. Otive Ibuza on how to lift Nigeria out of poverty. But up next in our Hidden Economics, more of your social value.
Many years me I done the go. Rock the mic, me I rock the show. Many hit songs when I go. Still them go say me I know they try. I see them complain of Kanye West. In speaking mind the people best. Everybody wants to be the best, but the world can do without the best. Akwakika sini Jehovah, nobody did Jehovah. I say happen on my car, declare them for I. Anything could not find
I Can't Kill Myself by the great Timaya. Born Enitimi Alfred Odom, Timaya is a Nigerian singer and songwriter. He is the founder of the South hip-hop group, Dem Mama Soldiers. His solo career began in 2005 with the release of Dem Mama, which also appeared on his debut album. In this song, he sings about how he can't kill himself. He retorts saying that even after his many hits, people still think he needs to do more. And then he says, everybody wants to be the best. Alexander Zverev, during the just concluded French Open, was concerned about why people thought he was underperforming, even though he ranked number 5 in the world, behind only Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, and Thiem. Alexander Sasha Zverev is the second youngest player ranked in the top 10 by the Association of Tennis Professionals. He has won 11 ATP titles in singles and 2 in doubles. So why do people still want more from you, even though you are doing your best? Well, it is because of the social value of what you produce. It is not so much that you are underperforming. It is that they want more of the social good that you produce. Although you get private gains from most goods you produce, there are negative or positive external benefits. Economists call them externalities. People want positive externalities, that is, good social benefits. So folks, don't worry. If you are at the true point of wondering if you can do any better, then you are already at your best. Even so, keep lifting the level. Don't kill yourself. They just want more of your social value. Our hidden economics.
Nobody they carry me pass. No be anybody they carry me pass. Nobody know me and they pray and fast. Only God they carry me pass. Only my Jehovah they carry me pass. Nobody they carry me pass. This life I can't keep myself. I can't keep myself. I can't keep myself. Allow me to flex. This life I can't keep myself. I can't keep myself. I can't keep myself. Strings. Yeah. Oh. Then don't clap. Whenever I read.
Before we start our discussion, here are our quick view answers. In 1989, South Korea's GDP per capita leaped to over 12 times the value for Nigeria, from being virtually at par up to the mid-1960s. South Korea's GDP per capita at $31,346 is more than 15 times the average for Nigeria. In 1986, the world's GDP per capita jumped to more than 5 times the average for sub-Saharan Africa. Today, the average GDP per capita for the world is about 7 times the sub-Saharan average, which is around $1,600. So what can Africa do to correct this poor comparison? President Muhammadu Buhari has come out boldly to state that Nigeria Africa's largest nation in income and population can lift about 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years. Good, but does Nigeria have the muscle to do this? To examine this issue, we have with us Dr. Otive Ibuzo. Dr. Ibuzo is the Executive Director of the African Center for Leadership, Strategy, and Development. He was the international head of campaigns of Action Aid International and country director of Action Aid Nigeria. Please join us in our discussion with Dr. Otive Ibuzo. All right, thank you, Doctor, for being on our show once again.
Thank you very much.
Magnus Packle, GVA. So today we want to talk about poverty. And, Africa is really poor. We are probably the poorest continent in the world.
Surely.
Yeah. And so, and we're beginning to want to do something about it, Africa-wide. Our President Muhammadu Buhari, has just said that he wants to have a system where he can lift about 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. So I think that that's commendable. So one of the things that I wanted to look at, but to try to see what is the problem with Africa, with Nigeria. How come we lag behind most other countries, most other regions of the world when it comes to economic progress? How come we are so poor? What is at the heart of it? If we were to come and pin something down and say, this is the real crux of the matter, what would we say? I know that you're an expert in this area, and that's why we've invited you. How do we begin to address the problem of poverty in Africa and in Nigeria in particular?
Thank you very much. As you stated correctly, Africa is the poorest continent. Nigeria now hosts the largest number of poor people in the world. For some years back, the largest number of poor people in the world was hosted by China, followed by India. But you see that in the last few years, especially in the past 2 decades, China and India, have lifted a lot of people out of poverty. From 1990 to 2013, within a space of 23 years, China lifted 730 million people out of poverty. And India lifted 170 million people out of poverty. So the president's initiative to lift 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years is commendable.
Yeah.
But if you want to think back and say, okay, why has poverty continued to increase in Nigeria? In spite of the fact that, especially from the 2000s to 2016, there was a rapid economic growth. The answer can be located.
To 2014 or 15.
Yeah.
Because the recession was in 2016.
16, yeah.
Okay.
From 2000, from the 2000 to 2014.
Yes.
It was a rapid economic growth.
Yeah.
Averaging 5 to 7%.
Yes.
Which was a great one. You will, if you want to locate the cause, you will locate it. Like many challenges in society, it's multifactorial.
Yeah.
But the major issues are that of leadership, enlightened followership, and policy.
Okay.
And if you want to say the immediate thing that is responsible for a lot of failure of leadership, failure of other, is policy. The kind of policies that have been implemented over the years and in Africa have not been able to lift people out of poverty. I think the corollary, or rather, I think what we need to look at is to say, okay, for those countries like China and India, what did they do?
Any connection with human capital deficiency or human capital progress?
Where there is a connection with human lack of focus on human capital development is also part of the policies I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because if you look at how do you give services to people that will make them to be out of poverty, is through having manifestos or policies of the party or government in power, which is translated into a strategic plan. And then from that strategic plan, you draw annual budget. And then you put a machinery in place for government to translate those budget provisions into actual services for citizens.
Did you just say manifestos of parties? Do we know? Do we know manifestos? People. We the people. Do we know the manifestos of our parties?
We don't. That's why I said ideally.
Yes.
In a system.
Yeah.
Because what is supposed to be is that even both the party leaders and citizens are supposed to see the differences in the manifestos and choose one which they think can better address their own challenges. And if you look at the Nigerian budget, for instance, unless there are fundamental changes to it, it will not be able to deliver services and lift people out of poverty.
You mean the amount of the budget or the structure of the budget?
Both the process of making the budget and the content of the budget itself. Take, for instance, how does any item or project go into the budget?
Okay.
There's no a system. In fact, one scholar once mentioned that if you take a budget of a particular ministry and you go into the details of the projects and where they are located, you can predict with a high degree of precision where the minister and permanent secretary comes from.
That's interesting.
So, if you want to develop, there must be a system of needs assessment and getting things into the budget that will affect the life of citizens. Not bureaucrats sitting in their offices and deciding which budget, which project to cite and where. If you go to the field, you will see within a radius of 100 meters, 5 boreholes. Whereas in other places, there's no systematic method of getting things into the budget. And when you see how the budget is made, and that is part of the problem you see in the budget, even the legislators have no input into what goes into the budget. That's why when
they do. We see them, pouring over the budget, dissecting the budget. So that's they're doing input.
What you see in the part, that's what you see in the part. If you look at the 2018 budget, the insertions.
That is the input.
That's what I'm saying. But if the process has carried them along before then, you will not experience that. Then when you go into the content of the budget, you discover that, in 1 year, I think during Jonathan administration, the capital expenditure was as low as 15%. And in any case, even now, it's about 30%. So, the way one of my friends...
But I thought that during the Jonathan era, they upped it to near 30%.
No.
Because the finance minister then, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, was talking highly about how they had upped it to near 30%.
They were always talking, even till now. Every government in the past 20 years have always been talking about increasing capital expenditure. But it's not reflected in the figures that come out. That is the reality. Recall.
Or in
That-
the actual implementation of the budget.
No, but
Yeah.
first, the beginning point is
Okay.
even what is
Sure, yeah.
what is in the budget itself.
Okay.
Recall that in the 1980s, we had 70% capital expenditure and 30% recurrent expenditure. One of my friends illustrated it
But
as
the economy didn't do well even then. I mean, we didn't do well during the 80s and 90s. Yes, even the World Bank has now found out perhaps the most important tool for fighting poverty is human capital. As without education and literacy at the most basic level, the chances of getting well-paying jobs is almost non-existent. The evidence for this is even seen in Nigeria, where northern states, which tend to have lower rates of education and literacy, also tend to have higher rates of poverty compared to southern states. Not to say that the southern states are doing that well themselves. So now I applaud President Muhammadu Buhari as he appears ready to take the fight to poverty. He has drawn a line in the sand, daring poverty, that Nigeria is set to lift 100 million people out of the malady in 10 years. So this is President Buhari's vision. But like in Egypt, when Pharaoh or the king had his dream, he needed a Joseph to draw out a battle plan against famine, the object of his dream. As I hope is correct, it appears President Buhari already has a strategy, and it involves a serious program of industrialization and job creation. And I understand these are to be implemented in communities across the nation. I have been suggesting for long that any economic development program not rooted in the community is rooted in failure. The economic strength of Nigeria lies in the strength of our communities, which when aggregated can produce an insuperable Nigeria. At the EBS, our Innovative Red in Africa program insists that much synergy must be harnessed among academia, business, and policy to drive any national community development activities. And human capital development is central for sustainability. Let's state this now. It is wrong to say that Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world. It is not. After all, before China lifted well over 800 million people out of poverty, it was not called the poverty capital of the world. Nigeria just has a lot of people in poverty. Clearly, it is shameful to have so many people in poverty. But they can be evacuated from this economic location. Our governments can do it. So let's get started. I'm Magnus Paco, and that's my view.
Abdullah.